New comments from Chinese leader Xi Jinping, who took a veiled dig at the U.S. as he promoted his vision of a new global order. Xi told leaders at a major summit, quote, "The house rules of a few countries should not be imposed by others." He said more as well.
We should advocate for an equal and orderly, multipolar world and a universally beneficial and inclusive economic globalization, and make the global governance system more just and equitable.
What truly interesting is who was there rubbing shoulders with Xi. Russia's Vladimir Putin and India's Narendra Modi all shared a laugh with the Chinese leader on the sidelines, really almost literally rubbing shoulders. For Modi, it was his first trip to China in 7 years. Let's get right to CNN's Ivan Watson, who is in Tianjin, China, with this rather extraordinary summit. Ivan.
That's right, and it's wrapping up now. The leaders of countries from across the Middle East and Asia have been gathering in this huge building here. Where they boast that they represent nearly 50% of the world's population, starting to see their motorcades leave now, John. And I think the enduring image is of those leaders of three of the world's largest countries, Russia, China, and India, looking pretty cordial and happy together, and all agreeing that this is a time of global uncertainty, and they're all calling for some kind of newer, fairer system of government. A lot of digs taken at what they describe as a world order that's been dominated too much, they argue, by the U.S. since the collapse of the Soviet Union. Chinese leader Xi Jinping complaining about bullying. The Russian President Vladimir Putin saying that this kind of Atlantic Eurocentric world order, these institutions are outdated. Of course, he's complaining at the same time as his military is nightly bombing cities in Ukraine in a war that he only described here as a crisis. It is notable that the Prime Minister of India was here. He skipped last year's Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit, in part, I think, because of the fact that India and China's relations have been pretty bad. About 5 years ago, soldiers from India and China were beating each other to death in skirmishes in a disputed border region in the Himalayas. He's clearly here mending fences and still stinging from the fact that the Trump administration just days ago imposed 50% tariffs on India, much higher than on India's arch rival Pakistan. And that's seen by many Indian experts as stabbing India in the back and a U-turn on decades of growing U.S.-Indian relations. Watch this place closely, because in a couple days' time, China will go from flexing its diplomatic muscles to flexing military muscles with a huge parade, military parade in Beijing. It will be attended by none other than Vladimir Putin and also the leaders of North Korea and Iran. John.
Yeah. High symbolism there. Ivan Watson, great to have you. Thank you very much. Bianna?
All right, joining me now is CNN senior affairs analyst Kim Dozier. If there's anyone who loves a military parade, Kim, we know it's Vladimir Putin. He's conducted one every year in Moscow, and now he's going to be there with Xi Jinping on Wednesday to watch China's. To pick up on what Ivan said about Putin's statements, here's what he said today at the summit and how he described the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. He said it's a system that could replace the outdated Europe Central and Euro-Atlantic models and would take into account the interests of a maximum number of countries and would be truly balanced. Putin has long been pushing for a multipolar world order, one that is less focused on U.S. and a unipolar world dominated by the U.S. being the global superpower. Is he getting that wish come true now?
Well, what we're seeing is this formation of this Eurasian bloc that is strengthening its ties economically, militarily, diplomatically, and China is in the lead. You know, China wants to conquer the world through trade, through markets, vice through force, and replace the U.S. as the leading global power. And it's taking advantage of this moment when Trump has alienated people, so many nations, including India, which was becoming an ally, whereas in the previous White House administration, the Biden administration had used market forces and joining together to try to discipline China and Russia. In this case, however, we see that sort of method being thrown out the window, and now these tariffs producing a fusion of nations that haven't always had the West's best interest at heart, especially as we see with the war of aggression in Ukraine.
Yeah, and Modi making his first trip to China in some 7 years, coming after the U.S. slapped an additional 50% tariff on India for purchasing Russian oil and gas. And yet we saw those striking images of Modi not only sitting in Putin's motorcade for an hour for a meeting prior to walking in and meeting with other world leaders, but they walked in hand.
Joining us now, Ambassador Michael Carpenter, former NSC Senior Director for Europe. And Ambassador, first, what do you make of the timing of this gathering there in China and the message that these leaders are trying to send?
Well, I think the timing is very fortuitous for Indian Prime Minister Modi, because he's able to now leverage the fact that Trump has imposed these 50% tariffs on India and show up at this meeting, as you said, with President Putin of Russia, with Xi Jinping of China, and be seen as someone among equals with like-mindeds, even as he's being spurned by the United States. And so I think for Modi, this is a big opportunity, but also, of course, for Putin and for Xi and the other dictators who will show up in China, this is an opportunity to sort of reaffirm the axis of aggressors, or the axis of autocrats, if you will, and their cooperation in the defense of their regimes against what they see as democratic encroachment. Now, the democratic world is at the same time sort of much less cohesive than it has been in the past, because you have President Trump, who has made overtures to President Putin, but not so much to fellow democracies in Europe.
So French President Emmanuel Macron says if today's deadline passes without any action, quote, it means that once again President Putin played President Trump. All Putin has said so far today is that he's reached understandings with Trump over ending the war in Ukraine at that summit we saw in Alaska. So in your opinion, is the president being played? What happens next here?
Well, I think with the upshot of the meeting in Alaska was that essentially President Trump gave President Putin a permission slip to continue the bombing in Ukraine, which he has done. In fact, the bombing under the 7 months of the Trump administration has been more intense and more damaging, especially in Ukrainian cities, than at any point previously during the war. And so essentially, by letting this deadline for imposing costs on Russia come and go, President Trump is allowing President Putin to continue this effort to bomb Ukraine into submission. And it doesn't appear that that is going to change anytime soon. And so no matter what happens with subsequent meetings and potentially a trilateral summit with the U.S., Ukraine, and Russia, it's unlikely that Putin is going to give up on his demands that he continue to subjugate Ukraine.
Well, and we, of course, saw President Trump also threaten economic war against Russia if they didn't acquiesce to at least having these talks. And clearly that has so far not worked.
Yeah, but he hasn't really imposed any of those notional costs on Russia. So he's talked about potentially tariffs on Russia. He's talked about potentially increasing sanctions, especially targeting Russian oil revenues. But in reality, we haven't seen any of that play out. So there's been zero tariffs on Russia. There have been tariffs on just about every country in the world except Russia. We haven't seen additional sanctions. We haven't seen additional cost imposition measures. And so Putin must be smiling in the Kremlin and thinking to himself, this is great. I just get to continue what I've been doing all along with absolutely zero repercussions.
What do you make of the dynamic now on the global stage, where you see lack of implications or impact from Trump on Russia, but then you see tariffs leveled at allies like India, and then you see India cozying up to Russia and China and that so-called axis of upheaval there in China? So what do you make of all of that, and how dire could that be for our own national interests?
Well, what's interesting with the tariffs that were imposed on India, so those were ostensibly because India was purchasing Russian oil, but larger consumers of Russian oil, such as China or Turkey, were spared those sanctions. And so I think the Indian Prime Minister Modi saw this as a real affront, and that's why he is now trying to make common cause with China, even though they have a very complex relationship, including hostilities in 2020, but also with Russia's Vladimir Putin.
We've got breaking news this morning. A major security summit in China is putting President Xi Jinping in the spotlight with more than 20 other world leaders. And it's also giving Vladimir Putin a chance to get closer with India's Prime Minister Modi as the two leaders shared a warm greeting with Xi. And you can also see Modi holding Putin's hand. Hopefully we can show some video of that, of Modi and Putin actually walking together, holding hands. CNN senior international correspondent Ivan Watson explains how the Chinese leader is using this meeting to outline his vision for a reshaped global order, with Beijing leading the way.
Pamela, I think the enduring image of this regional summit will be the leaders of three of the world's largest countries, that's Russia, China, and India, cordially rubbing shoulders, looking very happy together, and complaining that the world has gotten more uncertain and chaotic than ever. This has been a forum for Russia and China, two close partners, to complain about the U.S. dominating international relations too much in their eyes since the end of the Cold War, and calling for the creation of a new, as they would put it, more fair system of governance.
Did Vladimir Putin just drop the ultimate bombshell on Donald Trump? A so-called blackmail tape that could change everything. Buckle up, because what I just saw in this video is absolutely jaw-dropping. So here's the deal. The clip making waves right now shows Putin releasing material that he has been holding over Trump for years. And if this is legit, we are talking about one of the most explosive leaks in the modern politics. For years, rumors have swirled about secret holdings and shady deals. But this could be the smoking gun. Think about it. Why now? Why would Putin, of all people, pull the trigger at this exact moment? Is it revenge? Is it strategy? Or is it just a warning shot to remind Trump and the world that Russia still has cards to play? The timing is too perfect to ignore. And honestly, watching this unfold feels like something out of a political thriller. You can't help but wonder, if Putin really had this in his back pocket all along, what does that say about Trump's past decisions? About international deals? About the kind of influence Russia may have quietly held? But here's the kicker. We don't know the full truth yet. Is this authentic? A deepfake? A political stunt? Either way, the impact is undeniable. The world is talking, and Trump's camp is already scrambling. So, what do you think? Is this Putin playing 4D chess, or just smoke and mirrors to stage chaos? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm dying to hear what you make of this. And hey, hit that like button if you want me to keep covering these insane twists, because trust me, this story is only getting started. Thank you for watching.